There are snipers here. They're targeting us directly. Just yesterday I was there and I could hear it.
It's the end of February 2025. The army and the rapid support forces are fighting for control of Khartoum. The army recently captured this neighborhood in Bari, which had been under RSF control since the war began.
A single strike was enough to bring down the entire building. The ground floor cracked and the whole structure collapsed.
Now, house by house, street by street, the military is sending a clear message. They've either forced the RSF to retreat or wiped them out. Here, some civilians are making their way back.
This is the first time in 2 years we've come home. The situation is catastrophic. The shelling destroyed the whole house, and even the toilets.
The danger is relentless. Every day, more lives are lost.
It's hard to say exactly, but we know it's a lot. The number of injured has definitely surpassed 100,000.
Meanwhile, soldiers march proudly around Khartoum.
The militia is breaking down. The enemy will be defeated. Our army will be victorious.
For 2 years, the army and the RSF have been locked in a bitter war. They were once allies, but they then turned on each other, fighting for control. The conflict has claimed tens of thousands of lives, and both sides have been accused of targeting civilians. More than 12 million people have been forced to flee, making this the world's worst humanitarian crisis in recent memory. Sudan's capital, Khartoum, and neighboring Bari and Omdurman have become ghost towns. In recent months, the army has pushed the RSF out and is now urging residents to return to Khartoum. One last checkpoint, a final crossing over the Nile after 2 years away from home. Ibrahim, Asma and their 3 sons, Awab, Mohammed and Ahmed, were forced to flee Khartoum when the war broke out. Since then, they've been displaced all across the country. After 5 grueling days on the road, they're finally heading home.
I'm so happy to be able to return, to go back with my children. I want to watch them play, and for life to feel normal again. I also want to go back to work.
They live in Bari, just a short drive from the bridge that connects the city to Khartoum. But as they approach, reality sets in.
This is horrible. I'm shocked. I haven't been here in 2 years. Everything is damaged, even the cars. It's heartbreaking. There's no one around. Go over there, by the collapsed wall. Yes, that one.
They didn't know their house had been caught in the crossfire.
Come on, let's open the gate. We need to open it.
How are you going to do that?
Wait.
It's tied shut with a cable. The house has been completely destroyed. There's nothing left.
The RSF seized everything of value when they occupied the area.
شفتوا المنظر كيف؟
Look around. The plants have taken over. Our belongings are ruined.
أنا ما عرفته.
I don't even recognize this place. It doesn't feel like it's ours anymore.
لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله.
We left for a week or two to celebrate Eid. The news said the conflict would last just a few days. Then a week turned into a month. We never imagined we would be away for 2 years.
More than 3 million people fled the Khartoum region, leaving its war-ravaged streets eerily silent. But slowly, life is starting to return. A familiar face emerges, and then, in the distance, a neighbor.
Where are we supposed to go? Where will we live?
For now, you'll stay with someone.
What do you mean?
Take your family somewhere safe. You can come back during the day with your wife to rebuild. But it's best to sleep with your children elsewhere for now.
There are plenty of empty houses. Stay in one and come back here during the day to slowly rebuild everything. There are empty houses everywhere.
So he can just move into any house?
Of course, anywhere he wants.
See, problem solved.
Pick any place you like.
What a joy. My neighbor, Abdallah. How are you?
بخير الحمد لله تسلم بخير الحمد لله كيف حالك ان شاء الله كويس بخير الحمد لله كيف حالك ان شاء الله كويس بخير الحمد لله تسلم بخير الله يسلمك بخير الحمد لله ان شاء الله بخير ان شاء الله كويس بخير الحمد لله كيف حالك ان شاء الله كويس
Abdallah has stayed here throughout the war. After his friend's place was occupied, he kept an eye on Ibrahim's mother's house, which was spared from the shelling.
السلام عليك يا.
هي كان في العيد دي بربطان بعدين هنا قلنا هي كلها
السلام عليك. قادلوا.
I had to lock everything up or things would have been stolen. People broke in twice. I did what I could.
Ibrahim starts to clear the rubble. Restoring his home will take time. But for now, he has a more urgent priority.
What matters most is getting my kids back in school. I don't want them to be a lost generation like us. That's why I brought them back here.
Nearly 17 million children in Sudan have had their education disrupted by war. Many schools remain closed, and some now shelter displaced families. Reopening them is a top priority as people return.
In our last class, we had to stop during a physics lesson. We were talking about gravity, right?
Only a few students have returned to this school in Omdurman, Khartoum's twin city. Many fled, and some are still missing. But for those who do come back, skipping any more classes is just not an option.
I want to be a doctor. That's why, despite the war, despite the fighting, despite the bombings, I came back to school.
Many teachers haven't returned, and some schools are in ruins.
We're working as volunteers. The conflict has dragged on for nearly 2 years, and we've only been paid 3 times. But I keep teaching for the children, for Sudan's future. When I step into the classroom, I know this is where I'm meant to be.
This school is in an army-controlled area. But that doesn't mean it's safe.
The RSF may have gone, but the bombing hasn't stopped. People call it random shelling, but I don't believe that. They want to spread fear, kill civilians, and drive residents out of the city.
Lessons finish by noon, and in the afternoons, the classrooms turn into shelters for displaced families. Meanwhile, Omar's children wait anxiously for him at home.
Yanat, come here. How are you? Everything okay?
They're terrified. The fighting has left deep scars.
Whenever she hears gunfire, she drops whatever she's doing and runs inside. Right, Yanat? She's seen bombs fall too close, but thank God she's never been hurt. When there's a bomb, where do you hide?
Despite calls for people to return, the bombings continue to spread fear among civilians. In Omdurman's bustling marketplace, daily life goes on. But not an hour passes without an explosion shattering any sense of normality. Every day, people are wounded. And lives are lost.
Scalpel.
This young man's leg was fractured by a stray bullet.
Do we have the saw?
Dr. Jamal, an orthopedic surgeon, has become a lifeline in the Khartoum region. Throughout the war, he's kept his hospital running. It's the only one that stayed open without interruption. Since April 2023, he's treated tens of thousands of patients here.
Most of the injuries we see are open fractures caused by gunfire. These wounds are far from clean. In more than 20 years as a doctor, I've never seen anything like this. Such severe injuries with such poor survival rates. In most cases, the prognosis is grim.
As he operates, another shell strikes a nearby neighborhood, killing at least one person and injuring others who are immediately taken to Al Naro Hospital.
It's a shell fragment that lodged in her head, but we managed to remove it.
Souir isn't a soldier and doesn't live near a military base. Her family had been recently resettled to Khartoum.
There were 2 bombings. 2 houses in our neighborhood were hit. The first shell landed on the house right across from ours. The second hit our home.
I was struck in the head. When I woke up, I was in the hospital with fragments in my head, my feet, my legs. I don't know if I'll survive. May God seek justice. May God seek justice.
For civilians to survive, this hospital must stay open. But it's struggling to stay afloat. With each major attack, the staff is pushed to their limits. In February, a single shell killed 56 people and wounded over 150. The hospital reception has become an emergency treatment room. The wards are packed. As the doctor moves through the chaos, a man dies on a stretcher. But there's no time to grieve. The living need him more. Patients wait in the hallways, hoping for their turn.
How are you, Hajja? How's your health? Let me see. This family was trapped by the RSF. This woman had a fracture. They wouldn't let her leave. The family was forced to hand over 3 million Sudanese pounds. That's about $1,500 or $1,700 to escape.
After treating nearly 20 patients in less than an hour, the doctor finally gets a brief moment of rest. In his office, separated by a simple partition, is a bed.
This is my house now. I'm in charge here, and with that responsibility comes sacrifice. Staying at the hospital for 1, 2, 3 days, that's normal. Once I stayed for 12 days straight.
Downstairs, Sui, the woman with the head injury, is ready to be discharged. She's lucky. Wounds like hers often lead to tragic outcomes.
Your mother is fine. She's fine. She's okay.
Life in their neighborhood carries on, despite the regular shelling.
I never want to return to that house.
Come stay with me. I won't let her go back there.
This morning she was fine. Now she's like a different person. It's God's will. Our wardrobe was right here. My wife was just putting things away. The most important thing is that she's alive, thank God. The shell came from Ombada.
That confirms it came from an RSF position, likely as an act of revenge. The paramilitary forces dominated the first year of the war, but since September 2024, they've suffered major losses in the region. Week after week, the army is advancing further. When the conflict began, this retired high-ranking officer returned to the battlefield.
Fierce battles were fought here. The home of Abdurrahim Dagalo, the RSF's second in command, is in this area, heavily guarded. Yet, despite that, the army, with its allies, captured this key location. From here, God willing, we will liberate the rest of Khartoum.
Only a handful of civilians remain.
We've been here throughout the conflict. We never left.
The army encourages them to share the horrors they endured. These two men wish to remain anonymous by fear of concerning their families abroad. They were trapped in their homes and each lost 40 kilos as a result.
Only the elderly were allowed at the market. There were checkpoints everywhere. If a young man was caught, he wouldn't come back. He'd be taken for questioning. But for older ones like us, they didn't ask anything.
They faced daily looting, threats, and clashes in their neighborhood.
All of these windows have been destroyed. The glass in the house is shattered. Look, 2 apartments were hit by a shell.
Just a few streets away, the army has taken back control of one of the country's largest mosques, which sits above a shopping center. The RSF had been using it as a base.
Many RSF fighters were killed here. You can still smell the corpses.
The supermarket was looted, but it's impossible to confirm by who. Now the shelves are bare.
This area was liberated recently, but we can't go further into the market. It may be booby-trapped.
The army warns the RSF often leaves hidden explosives. Securing Khartoum will be a slow and dangerous task.
This is the main prayer hall. The walls were lined with screens. They stole them. They even took the zinc wiring.
Before the war, thousands gathered at this mosque every Friday. Though looted and damaged by fighting, it still stands. Now, for the first time since the fighting began, an imam leads prayers.
Month after month, 20 months of war. What comes next, my brothers? The militia is falling apart. The enemy will be defeated. Our army is winning. City by city, we are taking them back.
For a brief moment, soldiers step away from their posts to pray. A rare break in a still unsafe neighborhood.
This Friday prayer shows we're nearing the end of this battle. If the war was still raging, we couldn't gather like this. But now we can. It's a sign of progress. I believe this marks a new era of rebuilding.
After the prayer, the soldiers want to show us a nearby building.
This was where al-Burhan Dagalo, a key RSF militia leader, lived.
It's unclear who looted the house. Both the army and the RSF have been accused of theft and other abuses. But for these soldiers, there's no doubt.
The RSF militia looted this place, taking from their own people. This gym is fully equipped, better than anything in government buildings. It's brand new. The Dagalo family lived in luxury, while the Sudanese people suffered. Even our military bases don't have facilities like this. But, thank God, it will all be returned to the people.
Rebuilding Sudan's civilian life will take time. After gaining control of Khartoum, the army will now have to restore basic necessities: electricity, water, and food. That's the mission Omar has taken on. By day, he's a teacher. By night, he runs a charity that operates a takia, a community kitchen.
We're heading to the market to buy food. Rice, charcoal, spices and chicken. We'll prepare meals tomorrow and distribute them to schools in Bari hosting displaced families.
With funds sent from Sudanese communities abroad, Omar is helping those in need. Charities like this have sprung up all around Khartoum. When Omar visits, he does so with a full truck.
With these ingredients, we'll prepare 30 large pots of rice and 10 pots of chicken sauce. That should feed around 1,200 to 1,500 people.
The next morning, Omar's team crosses the Nile to deliver aid. They're needed everywhere.
Whenever a place is liberated, we bring food. People tell us, it's been 2 years since I had meat. They only get 1 meal a day, and it barely sustains them.
More than 100 families are living in this school, a few hundred meters from the front line.
السلام عليكم. كيف الحال؟ كيف الحال شباب؟ كيف الحال؟ إن شاء الله بخير. كيف أخباركم؟ تمام الله يديك العافية بارك الله فيك. كيف الصحة؟ إن شاء الله بخير. بارك الله فيك. ما في مساعدة ضعيفة.
The support we are receiving is insufficient. At the beginning, when the displacement centers were opened, there was state assistance, which was adequate. People also helped us. But recently, since the start of the year, government aid has come to a halt. And the takiyas in the region bear this heavy responsibility.
But the camp's cooks, all volunteers, barely have anything to prepare.
This big pot is for 8 to 10 people. We're adding sauce to the rice to make it softer. Dry rice is hard to digest.
Nearly 25 million people in Sudan are facing hunger. That's half the population. A situation made worse since the halt of American aid to the Sudanese government. 2 families are living in this classroom, and the damage to the roof shows they're far from safe.
When I see these children living in schools, it breaks my heart. I feel joy because I'm helping them, but also sadness because they have no roof over their heads and no food.
Many takiyas are still operating, but they can't keep up with the growing demand. And some neighborhoods receive no food aid at all. Ibrahim's family, who've just returned to their destroyed home, is in that situation. They're nearly out of money, but still must go to the markets. The army has just regained control of the area. Soldiers are everywhere.
We have everything we need, but it's so expensive, very expensive.
With enough food to last the day, Ibrahim returns home, unsure what tomorrow will bring. This is their first hot meal in 5 days. A small comfort for the 3 boys.
We're happy, but we'll need to rebuild everything. The shell destroyed it. After that, we'll never leave here again.
Regret is pointless. I'm back to rebuild. I'll raise my children here, and one day my whole family will return. We will live together peacefully.
We have a saying, as long as our souls are here, we can rebuild. If I had lost a child or if I had died, there would be nothing left to do. But what we lost, we will replace. We hold on to hope. God is with us.
Since January 2025, only a few thousand people have dared to come back to the Khartoum region. Despite the army's advances, for now, returning is a decision made only by those with no other choice.